Hello, everybody. Welcome to session two of the Bebop Rewatch. This is a podcast coming to you from Wulong Talks, of course. And my name is Jason. I'm hosting the show, and I'm joined tonight by Rich Reviews, aka the Wrestling Kid, aka Rich Kid. Rich Kid, say what's up, man.
What's up? What's up, people? Thank you for coming again.
Yeah, for sure, man. Thank you for joining us again. Boy, well, it's been a little while since we've been able to get one of these done. Apologies for that, but sometimes life gets in the way as it does. But don't worry about that now because we're here and we're ready to talk about session two because session two is awesome. It's actually brilliant. Like, literally, it's one of the funniest episodes I think we've seen. I mean, this is probably the first sort of foray into to comedy that we get with Cowboy Bebop, and it shows you kind of how easily the show can switch between different genres and different styles. Um, as I said, I found this episode funny as hell. There's some really like good laugh out loud moments that we'll go through within the podcast today. But Rich, what did you think of the episode overall, man? Did you find it like funny? Did you find it quite touching, or was there other things that you kind of took away from it?
No, I loved it. Um, Once again, it's I can't lament how much I love this show. And every single episode. But the thing that I loved about this show, or the thing that I loved about this episode, is that this episode is completely different to the last episode.
Yeah.
Like that, just completely different.
Mm,
Okay, it's like same characters, but then this, whereas like the last one felt a bit like a Western. Yeah. The last episode felt a lot more like had like Western kind of like feel, like a Western feel to it, with a bit of the private detective, which is the main base of the series anyway. But this one, it reminded me of the best describe. It reminded me of like a comedy of errors.
mm, mm.
Like where just certain scenarios are just set up in a particular way, almost pantomime like. Whereas like, oh my god, wonder where this person is, and like the crowd is basically screaming, "He's behind you." This episode felt like that,
Mm,
but then on the flip side, it had some really really like violent set pieces that
mm,
just kind of reminds you of, okay, fair enough, the last show felt like this and this show feels like this, but don't ever get it twisted. Don't ever forget that this show is still quite, you know, grounded in reality.
mm,
And I think that little moments of like violence just remind you of that. Or even like, like the day-to-day living, like we said, is about them just, this isn't like a superhero type of cartoon. This is two people that we've now met. This is their life on a day-to-day basis,
mm.
having to pay bills. So once again in this episode, they're talking about being hungry. It's just that stark reminder that funny things happen, but
Mm,
dark shit's always around the corner.
mm, mm, mm. Yeah, I mean, as we talked about in the first episode, their kind of hunger and starvation almost is a running theme throughout because if you've listened to the first session and you should have listened to it if you're listening to this one, Rich pointed out that as he just said that there's always a dark undercurrent with this show, and even though it takes a light-hearted approach to certain things, that sometimes it's still very much grounded in the reality of that world and the fact that these are guys who are basically on the poverty line. So for people who are supposed to be doing a job, they're not very good at that job because they don't seem to be getting paid too often. But yeah, this episode really does humor really really well, and as you said, it's kind of like it's a slapstick style of humor, which the show really doesn't have any right to be doing, considering, as you said, what we got from the first episode, which was quite a tense, intense experience and had lots of kind of dark Western vibes. This one is it still carries that kind of Western undercurrent in some of its influences, and we'll get into that in the episode. But boy, like they really went for the jokes on this one, and the jokes work. They all work really well because you're used to the seriousness of the first episode. So yeah, kudos to them, man. But yeah, let's get into talking about the episode itself, because it starts off with a bang, because we're introduced straight away to a character called Abdul Hakim. who we find out pretty early on is a thief, and not just any old thief, but is a pet thief apparently. Pets seem to be worth like quite a bit of money in that world, and he has managed to wrangle some kind of animal from what looks like a research facility, or from what we gather anyway early on in the episode, it's some type of lab where they're doing experimentation with animals. And the first kind of images we get of him, I just loved it, Rich, because it's all kind of framed from the back. He's at the toilet.
Yeah,
He's in the
yeah,
toilet
yeah,
cubicle, and he's kind of shot from the bottom up, so you get a sense of his, his imposing figure and the fact that he's quite a dominant sort of character, and the way he looks as well. He looks a lot. Well, we don't really even see his face at first because he takes off the bandages, doesn't he? And then he throws them in the
yeah.
toilet. And then you learn pretty quickly on that Abdul Hakim is somebody who changes his appearance often. So the reason that his face was wrapped up is because he'd recently had plastic surgery done to change his features. Um, and then he gets sort of confronted by these guys in white coats with guns whilst he's in the toilet, who are saying to him, come out and bring the animal with you, and are basically threatening him. And he takes them out like they're nothing. And literally in my notes, I wrote down Abdul Hakim is a badass. Like, because the guy just, he just like, without breaking a stride, he takes these
Yeah,
guys out, man.
four
Um,
moves. It's four moves.
four moves. I
Four
mean,
moves. Yeah.
Rich, like the way this dude just takes these guys out, just break it down, man. Show some love for that because
So you know what? See, you
it's
know what?
lit.
You keep on saying like how he takes them down. Listen, I don't think he took them down. He dismantled them. That was the thing. It was three men. It was three men basically standing in front of Hakim, point blank, with guns. Three men,
Mm,
and basically it's just the swiftness of it. It's one of those things where you don't. I mean, they actually they take a bit of a risk in how they film this actual fight because they actually don't feel that, like, how they basically deal with action scenes like how Hong Kong cinema deals with action scenes,
mm,
where it's quite a long shot so you can basically see all of the action. And as the series of Bebop goes on, you're going to see some like amazing action scenes that put big budget Hollywood movies to shame.
mm,
But this scene in particular, it just shows you the once again, it shows you like how Shinichiro Watanabe directs. It shows you the whole thing of like how it's quite intimate in there.
mm,
So that they're literally in a toilet. So at the same time, you've got to think of like basically how the scene is actually shot. It's shot in like quite a cramped toilet. So it's not it wouldn't even make sense to even film it like on a wide shot.
mm,
So basically, if you film it close up, it shows you that like how how quick and how swift he has to be in regards to the people that he's actually facing. So I think basically he does like a left kick to someone's shin that knocks that person down. Then he does like a chop to the neck for the other person. Then he does a punch to the other guy, and then the person that he chopped in the neck, he comes back and I think he kicks him in the stomach. So
mm,
like you can just imagine how fast he's had to do that. But if had to, and you kind of get the like you said, you get that feeling that he's a badass so much that they had to film it like that, where it's literally just it just showed the fist or the foot connecting with a certain body part because he is that much of a badass. He is that fast. It's fucking it's beautiful how they film that scene.
mm,
Like it's just amazing.
mm. It's like what impressed me about it is even though it's short, it's the intricacy, is, as you pointed out,
Yeah.
and the attention to detail. The fact that he targets specific body parts of
Mm,
people in front of him for strategic reasons to get out of the cubicle quicker. It's just like it's just amazing that they put that much thought into how they're going to animate this scene. Just
mm.
amazing. And as said, it kind of sets the tone really for the whole episode, much in the way that they did with the opening of the first session that we saw. It really does kind of set you up for, yeah, this guy, this isn't a guy to be played with. Abdul Hakim can handle his if, when he needs to.
Mm, mm.
Yeah, and I just love that, man. I absolutely love that, and I love the way that they kind of styled the character as well, because he's got a
Yeah.
very kind of it's a contemporary kind of style for that time period in which Bebop is set in. but also it's quite classical in a way. Like he's got like a waistcoat on, and it's almost like he could be a character from a martial arts movie.
Mm,
And doing a bit of digging about him as well, I can give a little bit of trivia, but we'll save that for later on.
yeah,
But the character, yeah, he's just styled in a wicked way. He's got two hoop gold earrings. He's got like a the afro going on. Like the dude is just cool, man. Like
yeah, yeah,
really,
yeah.
really cool. In terms of the kind of the way he looks and things like that. So I really enjoyed that. And then we kind of transition on from there into space and aboard the Bebop, and we find out that Spike is watching a TV show, and it's our first introduction to the TV show Big Shot. Um, I like Big Shot is just like it's kind of brilliant the way that the TV show has been fitted within the anime because it's obviously a useful tool for the audience because it gives a bit of exposition and gives you a bit of background into who it is that the show is going to be focusing on in terms of the main antagonist. But it's really kind of like ludicrously over the top, and it kind of feels like the type of TV show that you would expect to see in this day and age because it's glitzy. It's got stupid catchphrases in it. It's got like loud lights. They're dressed as cowboys in the TV show, and we get to meet the two hosts of the show who are Punch and Judy. We get the references there. Judy is very scantily clad, which obviously is a reference to the fact that that's about what TV is these days. It's just people who are half naked, prancing about on the screen. Because that seems to be the only thing that people are interested in watching these days. Yes, I'm looking at you, Love Island. Um, and it just really kind of is in keeping with the tone of this episode as well, because Punch and Judy are quite jaunty characters. Rich, go into a little bit about the Big Shot TV show and I said the kind of significance and Punch and Judy themselves and how they're presented as well.
Well, the thing is, well, Punch and Judy, the Punch and Judy show is basically it's a show that's aimed at cowboys.
Mm,
So we know the cowboys that of the show, but we know them better to be, but like basically bounty hunters.
mm,
So that's what they are, and it's basically just them just giving them like bounty of the week. I don't know. There might be some. I'm not sure if they even still show this show on on no. In fact, I know they don't show this show. But do you remember a show on that they used to show on Sunday afternoons on ITVJ called Police 5?
yeah, man.
Yeah, yeah, and that basically was just like that. I think he used to be like an ex-inspector, and then he presents this show, and he just goes about crimes that have happened throughout London. So if you see this person, just to report them to Crime Stoppers and then shit like that,
Mm,
and that's what Big Shot is like. It's just, but it's aimed specifically at bounty hunters, saying like, okay, like this week we've got this person who's escaped, or this person's got a bounty in their head, so you can go and find them and X, Y, Z. But the way how it's filmed, it's weird because even after only like 2 episodes, the universe that we've been invited to in Cowboy Bebop, like we feel totally at home.
mm,
Is the weirdest thing. You feel totally at home. So when you're watching this show, is like you have to take a step back and go like, wow, like I'm watching a show in the show, but this show that they're showing is equally as entertaining as the actual show that I'm watching as well. Your
mm,
mind, like, it's ridiculous.
mm,
and
mm,
and I just like the fact that like you said, that they're just two characters that are just over the top.
mm,
And there's not even dissimilar to any type of TV show that you could probably find on TV now or back then. This would be like the equivalent of about for bounty hunters, but this would be the equivalent of like Eurotrash on Channel 4
mm,
back in the
mm,
day, showing boobs and stuff, and but trying to quote unquote educate you at the same time or give you some form of information. It's like, yeah, but there's a girl with like boobs hanging out, and this guy's got a funny mustache, and it looks like this show's probably going to be dubbed, with some funny British accents or something like that. It's just a really really good show, and once again it shows you how much thought they put into this into Cowboy Bebop. And it just reminds you of the reason why something like this has just lasted so long. The amount of thought and ideas that have been thrown into, like, not even just in the forefront, but just like in the background. It's just wicked, and that show is easily one of them because it's a recurring thing.
mm,
And And it's not even a thing of just like you get some form of exposition from the characters. It's nothing like that. When we watch that TV show, it's basically because Spike is watching it.
Mm.
And it's yeah, I love it. I love seeing it. I love seeing Punch Judy. Like like just they make me feel like I'm at home. So yeah,
Mm, mm, mm. And I mean, their greeting of kind of howdy amigos is something that you'll recognize from our website as well. It's something we
mm.
always use on there. And if you always wondered why, well, that's where it comes from. So yeah, now you know. So we find out that whilst they're watching the program Big Shot, that Abdul Hakim is worth quite a lot of money. So obviously that's great news for Spike and Jet, and Spike and Jet are back on the bebop and struggling to kind of make ends meet as they usually do. Um, and they decide that they're going to go after this bounty because he's worth like what is it, like 8 million wulongs or something like that? I think they
Yeah,
say.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Something ridiculous.
Yeah, it's something like really stupid. Um, so because of this high bounty on his head, it's like, well, we're up here starving, and this guy's out here worth 8 million. Let's go get him. So they go down to I can't remember the name of the planet that they go to. I'll try and look it up. I think they were in space at the time.
Yeah, yeah. They were in space
Sorry,
at the time.
yeah, they go to Mars. So Mars has actually been colonized at this point, and it's Mars they go to find or to go and try and track down Hakim. And you get a lot again of the same kind of banter you got between Spike and Jet in the first episode, and as you mentioned before, Rich, the food is never far away from their face. I'm sure that's where they start to first have the conversation about Peking duck as well, which is a conversation that keeps coming back to them. I think Spike says he wants Peking duck or something like that. Like Jet
Yeah,
says,
it is picking up. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, what do you want to do with the money or something like that? And he's like, yeah, I want Peking duck. And I love that because he's just such a specific thing. And once we get to Mars, the most of the planet we don't really see. We kind of land in a town that doesn't seem to have a name, but it's very very Chinese in its influence. One of the things that I noticed was that the all of the street signs weren't in Ikanji; they were actually in like Cantonese.
Yeah.
So there's a heavy kind of like Hong Kong influence to it. And the way that the streets are kind of laid out and stuff like that, it kind of reminded me a bit of some of the Hong Kong action movies that you and me have watched over the years.
Mm.
So clearly you can kind of see that influence in there. And it just, yeah, it looks like a living, breathing place, much like Tijuana did, in the first session. It looks like a living, breathing place. It looks like a place where people kind of inhabit and exist. And it's really, really beautifully done. Really, really beautifully done. Was there anything that stood out for you about Mars when you got down there?
No, like literally, basically, what you just said is that it's just done in in such in such a beautiful way. Like once again, it feels different, but
Mm,
then feels like home. That's the thing. And I like the fact, like like the whole thing of it's on Mars. They never really ram it down your throat. You're kind of given like bits and pieces of information as to the history of how this place is, like how it is, or how this galaxy how it is. Um, so you see them obviously just come to land, and you see like gateways and stuff like that, and then you just come to Mars, and then you just forget.
mm,
Like to be honest, it's one of those things. Like I mean, I've seen this. Well, I've watched it, this series like countless times, and I literally just watched the episode, obviously not too long ago, so we can talk about it. But once again, you've just reminded me that they're on Mars because it feels like home. It just feels the same.
mm,
There's no mention of it being terraformed or anything like that. It's just yeah,
mm.
just another town. Like if
Yeah.
you missed the first part of this episode, you could easily just think that the first and second episode took place in the same on the same planet, just in a different area.
Mm. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the details, as you said, that they put in make it so that it's because it's not. I guess it's not so much about the place; it's about the people that make the place.
yeah, yeah.
So even though there is some kind of small details that we spot here and there, I guess they want us to focus more on the characters and what's actually going on
Mm,
with them. So it was quite smart, I think, to do that, and kind of a cool thing to do as well. But yeah, so we get down to Mars, and Hakeem makes contact with a potential buyer. I don't know if you noticed, but he refers to himself on the phone as Snoop, which I thought was kind
Okay,
of
I didn't. I
cool.
see, yeah, I didn't even notice that. Yeah, I didn't
Yeah,
notice that.
yeah, I just caught that, and I was like, oh wow, okay. I mean, I don't know why I'm so surprised by the
Mm,
cultural references, given how many we got in the first episode. But
yeah, yeah.
yeah, it felt like, oh, okay, so this is a contemporary thing. This is something that's happening in recent times, and that people are aware of. And as we know about Shinichiro Watanabe, he loves his music, and he loves music of many different genres.
Mm,
And that's reflected in the soundtrack as well, which we'll talk a little bit about as well going forward. But Hakim makes contact, as I said, with a potential buyer for his wares that he's stolen. And then he goes off into a Chinese tea house, it looks like, a sort of bar slash tea house. And then he basically he gets conned. Like this master thief gets conned by like one of the simplest tricks in the book. Basically, well, Rich, you can tell what happens. So you go ahead,
yeah, like but basically, there's one guy like kind of like a tramp guy,
man.
just chatting nonsense. Like Hakim orders a drink, and basically this guy bumps into him and spills his drink. Then Hakim kind of gets angry, but then is prepared to kind of let it go. But this guy obviously starts, trying to get his attention, acting like a bit of a jackass. And Hakim basically ends up just squashing a cockroach and putting it in a glass and making this guy drink it. And while he's doing that, the guy's accomplice steals a briefcase with Hakim's, piece of booty that he's basically just purchased. But once again, like I said, the whole thing, as much as everything seems like quite a bit of a joke in this episode, there's like start realisms of brutality that just happen, and you're just like, yeah, this is kind of rough. And it
Mm.
shows you how mean Hakim is as well. Like I said, in the last fight, when you see where he lands his blows or where he throws his blows, he throws them at specific places that that could potentially like really hurt somebody or kill somebody. So that there's one bit where he kind of kicks somebody's knee, so you obviously you're going to dislocate somebody's knee. That's a leg effed up for like God knows how long. One of the blows is to somebody's throat, which can knock out or crush a windpipe, especially considering his size. So he's got that bully vibe to him, and basically, yeah, this bit where he just grabs this cockroach, like this cockroach crawling over the bar, just smashes it with his hand, throws it in a glass, and makes this guy drink it, and it's just mean. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
mean. So once again, is that like you find throughout all of these episodes, there's always like there's two sides to everything. So potentially, we've got this guy who looks pretty fucking cool. He looks like a cross between Jimi Hendrix and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or any other tall black basketball player without me trying to sound racist. Like, or and and a
Well,
mixture
certainly
of Lenny
one from
Kravitz.
the '70s, definitely.
Yeah, yeah,
One,
yeah, definitely one
yeah,
from the
from the
'70s.
'70s.
Yeah,
Yeah, man, that's what he looks like.
yeah. With a little sprinkling and dashing of like Lenny Kravitz thrown in for coolness.
Mm.
And so so like you said, so he looks badass, and then he's not somebody that you'd like to hang around with, or like someone you like to be friends with. And
Mm.
he basically shows it in this scene in this bar, and it's just fucking mad.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, and what kind of like freaked me out a bit about that scene was when he grabs the old guy's face
Yeah.
and forces the drink with the cockroach in it down his throat. You can hear him
Mm,
like kind of cracking the guy's jawbones and stuff.
mm,
And I
mm,
was like,
mm.
oh, that's like that's deep, man. Like you're literally here, crack, 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 crack. And I was like, oh, yeah, mate, that's gotta hurt. And you're right. It shows you that kind of the meanness of that world, and as well as the meanness of Hakim Abdul, and how he
Yeah.
is just a man who like is not gonna have anybody stand in the way of what he's trying to achieve. So yeah, that was a cool scene, man. It was a nasty
Mm,
scene, but it
mm.
was a cool scene. But yeah, as you said, he falls for kind of the oldest con in the book, in that this old man has a partner, and whilst Hakim is wasting time with this old man, the partner picks up the suitcase, and out he goes. And Hakim tries to give chase, but the guy jumps on the back of a dumpster and manages to get away, of a dump truck, sorry. And he decides he wants to try and open this case, and he opens the case, and you hear kind of a growl as the case opens, but it's done very cleverly in a kind of POV shot, so you never see what's in the case. It's only scene from the young man's point of view. And he's obviously not that impressed with what's in the case. And then we get a scene where Spike arrives on Mars and is kind of doing a little bit of research and trying to do a bit of detective work. So you get a bit more of the kind of private eye style storytelling that we got in the first episode where he's chasing this lead. And we get a cool reference thrown in there as well. You get the nunchucks, which are a reference. I think the actual seller says they're originals from Way of the Dragon as well.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, which is, well, man. I mean, we shouldn't really need to tell people about Way of the Dragon, but really, yeah, just
Where
school
the
them, school them.
Where the Dragon, basically one of the. It's weird. It's because you might get some young people who watch kung fu now and might go back to like old school kung fu movies and be like, yeah, this ain't shit. Like I like the Raid and I like Ong Bak. In fact, some people might even be still too young to have watched Ong Bak. And like I said, I mean those films they're all like perfectly perfect amazing kung fu films. But Where the Dragon, starring Bruce Lee. If none of you guys have seen it, like to be fair, if none of you guys have seen it, um, turn this off right now. Go watch the Bruce Lee films, then continue watching Bebop, and then while you're watching Bebop, listen to the show. So we're all on the same page because this is the equivalent to us talking about quantum science, and you're still reading Bill and Ben books or something like we're just not going to be in the same classroom, man. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, man.
So
Different
yeah, yeah,
wavelengths.
different way of yeah, man. Like yes, but basically the nunchuck is a famous. Is it a China? I'm gonna have to ask. It's a Chinese weapon, right?
I think it might be Chinese, and I think it might actually be Japanese in origin.
Okay, okay. Look at that.
Yeah, I
But
think
but
it's
basically, like,
because it was based on like a farmer's tool,
yes,
so
you're right. Yeah, 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 yeah.
something that they use to cut like
To
wheat
cut the
and
crops down. Yeah.
yeah, and then it was kind of modified for to use as a weapon.
Mm,
But yeah, yeah, like Bruce Lee, as you said, man, made that weapon famous. I mean, even
yeah.
if you go to Google right now and Google images of Bruce Lee, I guarantee you're going to get one of the first hits will be a picture of him with a pair of nunchaku, because of how skillful he was with them.
Mm,
There's
mm,
many famous videos out there on YouTube as well of him, wielding the nunchaku and showing off like what he could do with them. So yeah, I mean that was a very cool touch. I like that. That was a nice little reference, and it was one of
mm,
a couple of Bruce Lee references. As I said, we'll get to the trivia a little bit later on, but yeah, that was a nice touch, man. That was a nice touch. So then, what Spike kind of finds out that he needs to go to this specific pet shop called Animal Treasure, where they kind of deal in rare and exotic animals. And once we leave that scene, we then get the younger man with the suitcase trying to sell the contents of the suitcase to the store owner. And Spike manages to catch up with him and then pulls a gun on him. And there's a back and forth between him and the younger man who's stolen the briefcase. And they eventually get around to opening up the briefcase, like after this back and forth. And we get our introduction to probably one of my favorite characters in Cowboy Bebop. We get to meet for the first time our four-legged friend Ayn. Now he's not actually named Ayn in this episode. It actually ends without them giving him the name. But for those of you who've already seen Cowboy Bebop before, you'll know that this is Ayn, the dog, and Ayn's a very special dog. Um, he's a Welsh Corgi puppy, which I think is the same kind of dog that the Queen has, right?
yeah, yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she has
Oh,
them.
well, I don't think she has them anymore. I don't think she was allowed, was she?
I don't know. I mean, I remember for a long time she had corgis, but I
Yeah,
don't know if
yeah.
she's still got them all. I think she still does. I think she still does have
Because
them.
I heard they were hard to get rid of. Hard to get hold of. and so
Mm.
basically, like she wasn't allowed to, to own him or something. That's something like that, or maybe I might make it up. We'll Google it later on or something.
Yeah. We'll have a look into that later. And Iron, as we said, find out is a very special dog. He's what they call a data dog, meaning basically that he's genetically engineered to kind of carry information. And as a result of that, he's got an intelligence level that's far above, the average dog. Um, and he's just adorable when he comes out the case. You just want to like pat his head and stroke his chin and call him a good boy. He's amazing. Like he really is amazing, man. And Ayn obviously goes on to be quite a key character later on in the series, but we'll go into that as the relevant episodes come along. Um, then there's like this really cool scene where basically kind of Spike and Hakeem kind of pass each other at the same time because Spike
Yeah, yeah.
um, realizes that Ayn is just a dog, and so he kind of writes it off as he's worthless. This is pointless, and as he usually does, he loses his temper and he's like, I'm out here and bounces. And then yeah, as you said, you get this cool scene where they cross each other's paths, and because Spike doesn't really know too well what Hakeem looks like, he just kind of doesn't pay any attention to Hakeem walking past him, who then goes into the pet shop and pulls another gun on this same young man who stole the briefcase. By which point, the briefcase guy is like, Jesus Christ, like, what kind of day am I having here? You've pulled on me twice now. Um, and he then takes back, he attempts to take back the puppy, he attempts to take back Iron, but all kind of chaos ensues. Loads of the pets manage to get free, and we get like a whole heap of slapstick in this chase scene. So, Rich, I'll let you describe the first chase scene that goes on.
So okay, so which was it? You're gonna have to remind me what the first chase scene. The first chase scene is
Well, the first chase scene is when Spike finally clocks on that something is going on because he hears the ruckus back at the pet shop, comes
yeah,
back and then realizes that that's Hakeem and that Hakeem is getting away with Ayn. So he goes after Hakeem, and then they chase each other across the streets of Mars, and then they end up
yeah,
on the bridge.
yeah. So where the bit where basically like I said, it's just like a comedy of errors. So they're basically chasing each other, but then at this point, the place that yeah, because we haven't even mentioned the two basically like researchers or the scientists
Oh
that actually
God,
were
yeah,
looking after.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So remember they're running. So now they've basically figured out because there's a tracker on there.
yeah.
So they figured out where the package is going with iron. Um, so they're running, and then Spike is like basically chasing Hakeem, who's got the dog. But then once again, like you've got people who are running past or running past each other, or dealing with each other, who don't know who each other is, but they're
Mm,
all after this one thing. It's just so funny. It's just like it's just what could happen in a normal day to day life. Like sometimes you get lost and you keep on passing the same person, and like, okay, maybe just coincidence, and then you get to your destination and like you're in the same class or something,
mm,
and that's what it feels like in this bit.
mm,
But is the bit where they actually land on a bridge, and then this is kind of like something that you're like I said, even after only two episodes, it's something that's already played on your mind after what you've seen Spike can do in the first episode, and what you've seen what Hakeem can do at the beginning of this episode, and then basically have a standoff,
mm,
and and it's done like when I watched it now, it did kind of upset me because you didn't really get like the payoff
mm.
that you wanted, like you didn't really see them throw down. And I'm not sure. I mean, do you think there's any particular reason why that actually happened? Especially, I mean, after like you got like the whole chase scene, whether there's a little bit of laughter in there or not. But then at this point, you're thinking to yourself like, okay, well, it potentially the episode could end here with like the good guys caught the bad guy. Okay,
Mm,
let's see them throw down, and then they don't show it.
mm.
Why do you think that is?
I'm not sure. I mean, yeah, you're right to point that out. That was something I noticed as well. I was quite surprised that they kind of cut away basically from the fight and show Ayn instead. I guess maybe because they're foreshadowing sort of Ayn's importance to the story later on down the
Mm,
road, and also kind of showing, because I believe in that sequence it kind of shows Ayn is basically trying to dodge whilst the fight is going on, and find a way to get
mm,
off the bridge. And whilst they're throwing blows, a boat kind of goes under the bridge, and that's when Iron picks his moment and jumps off of the bridge onto the boat.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, yeah, maybe that's why they didn't do it. But yeah, you're right. It did strike me as a bit odd that they didn't go down that road. So excuse me. So yeah, I mean, it was weird and it was a little bit of a downer. I'm not gonna lie because I did want to see like Hakeem and Spike throwed out because that would have been a fight. But yeah, we didn't get it unfortunately. But we did get, as said, a very funny scene after that where, as said, Ayn jumps onto the boat, and both Hakeem and Spike leap off of the bridge to go after him. And literally, you realize that Ayn just jumped onto the boat so that he could lure them both onto the boat so he could jump
Yeah.
off. And you're just like, and I was like, I was just busting up because the way it's like it's animated and everything as well, it's just perfect. And as you said, it's like it's like the perfect kind of slapstick comedy because the two of them
Mm.
jump on this boat and then Iron's just like, yeah, see you suckers, and then jumps off. And they're both like, what? Like, why didn't we just jump off the bridge then? Like, so yeah, they end up. Their Spike manages to get off of the boat, but ends up in the water. Um, and Hakeem gets stuck on the boat, so the boat carries him downriver. And the end of the scene is Iron sitting on top of Spike's head, basically, and Spike looking like a bit of a fool because
Mm,
he
mm.
gets bounty and the dog has got the better of him. Um, so that was like kind of a really funny sequence. And listeners, when you watch it, like appreciate, man, because as said again, the attention to detail, and the comedic timing of it as well is really good, and it will make you laugh because it definitely made me laugh. Yeah, you're gonna enjoy it, man. It's very funny. So we get like the traditional kind of episode break, and then we get back. We're back on the bebop again, and Jet is now in the scene, and he's giving a collar to Ein. Um, that's also basically like a tracking device that's going to allow him to track Ein. You get to see the first glimpses of how Ein and Spike's relationship is going to be as well, because Spike can't stand him. It's just like, and it's like, I don't. He comes up with a line that's actually really good because it's a bit of foreshadowing as well for what's going to come. But he says, "I hate kids and pets,"
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
was like, "Ah, I see what you did there now." Like,
Mm.
I didn't appreciate that before, but I see what you did there. So, as said, listeners, that's a bit of foreshadowing for what's to come. But it's yeah, it's really funny to see like kind of Ein and Spike interacting. I think at one point Spike tries to hit Ein and Ein bites him or something like that on the
Yeah,
hand.
yeah, 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 yeah. Bites one hand.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it was very very funny the way that kind of plays out. Um, but yeah, they decide to use kind of Ein as like a bait, I guess, to lure out Hakim.
Yeah.
So they Ein and Spike go back to Mars, and Spike is left walking Ein down the street, looking very uncomfortable while he's doing it and
He just
feeling
looks
like he's
despondent. He just
yeah,
looks like he's wasting it.
feeling
He feels like he's wasting his life. Like,
he feels so sorry for himself in that scene. It's just it's pitiful,
mm.
but it's hilarious. And I think he says something like, "Oh, well, this is another great moment in the legend of Spike saving thousands of dog walker or something like that." And it's just like, "Oh, grow up, man." But yeah, he's very funny. He's very funny. And then we kind of get a cut back to the scientists as well, which we didn't get to mention earlier on. But Rich pointed out that obviously the scientists are still looking for this dog as well. And there's a group of them that seem to be in this van, this mobile van, who are trying to track down Iron as well. And they're saying, they give you a little bit about Iron's background and the fact that he's, a top secret research project and quite an illegal one as well. And they're both kind of sweating about the cops finding out and things like that. And it's funny because there's one guy who does all the talking, and then there's the other guy who just says, "Seems that way." Like whenever they and it's just like again, it's like the stupidest thing, but it's hilarious when you watch it because there's I said this one guy who's doing all the talking and all the kind of do you think it's this or do you think it's that, and he's asking questions and his answer the other guy's only answer is seems that way. you
Yeah,
know
yeah, yeah,
and I think he only actually has a one other line that scientist, the one who keeps saying seems that way, like he literally only has one other line aside from that, which I thought was just funny. And basically Hakim takes the bait, and he comes out of hiding, and he manages to kidnap Ayn. The scientists decide they're going to use this dog whistle to try and attract every dog in the city, and then that way they're going to find Ayn and capture him. And again, there's another funny back and forth that was just hilarious, where yeah, the scientist who's driving and is doing most of the talking says, let's use the dog whistle to try and capture the Ayn. So they're like, okay, we're going to turn it on. So then the driver's like, have you turned it on yet? So then the scientist in the back kind of looks at him like he's stupid and goes, yeah. And he goes, but I can't hear it. And then the other scientist is like, well, yeah, it's a dog whistle. It's too high pitched for you. Only dogs can hear it. And then the driver's like, after a pause, oh, yeah, yeah, I knew that. I was just testing you. Because even I was watching it, and I was like, you don't really think you're going to be able to hear a dog whistle, do you? Like, come on. We all know that. That's dog 101. You can't hear dog whistles. Only they can hear it. But yeah, that was quite a funny scene, and shows like kind of how skillful they are at blending in this comedy into the episode, and it doesn't feel in any way kind of out of place with the show, as you rightly mentioned at the top as well. It just fits in with the world that we've kind of been dropped into, and the world that they've created. So yeah, I mean, at this point, I think Hakim steals like a car. I mean, do you remember like kind of what happens from here, Rich? I think it's like he steals a car, doesn't he, from a wedding or
Yeah,
something like that.
but yeah, basically he steals what looks like to be, once again, one of the things that you did mention earlier on, Jay, is that, whereas like the first episode had that whole Western vibe, this one's got, it's got a bit of a like a sci-fi with, let's say, like 70s black exploitation feel to it.
Mm,
Because the car he steals, it looks like a cross between like some form of like old school Ferrari with a DeLorean with like gold doors or
mm,
Seahawk doors. And he basically, I mean, and once again, like you said, like every time you see like Hakim doing any form of violence on the screen, it's just brutal. And it's almost like a vacancy behind his eyes, because like he gets into the car and they try to stop him, and
yeah,
he's not
yeah,
even
that's right.
looking.
Yeah.
His hand just comes out, just goes.
Yeah, he
It's just
literally just
straight.
punches the lights out of
Yeah,
somebody, and you're
yeah.
like, wow, that's just mean, man. That's mean. Like, bro.
but he doesn't even stop what he's doing. It's like half his body is still basically starting the car, and the other hand is just like, okay, and then comes back to help another side of the body. I'm gonna close the door now. Okay, what you doing, right hand? Okay, you're starting the engine. Okay, cool. Let's start moving. It's just he's almost like he's a robot. He's not human.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah, no, it's too funny, man. That's too funny. It really is. And then, they said the scientists enact their dog whistle plan, and try that, and predictably, like a bunch of dogs come running towards the van. Ayn is there, and Ayn pulls off another one of his brilliant maneuvers, where he basically lures all these dogs behind him. They're all running,
Mm,
and just as the scientists shoot a kind of hydraulic net to try and catch him, he dodges out of the way at the last minute, and all these other dogs get caught, which I thought was
mm,
brilliant. And then I believe Spike catches up with him at that point. And then Hakim is obviously giving chase in the car. He manages to nab Ayn, and he sprays him with kind of like a knockout spray to send him to sleep. Um, and then Spike is like, "Oh well, sod this. I'm gonna give chase in, the swordfish." So we get the swordfish back again. Um, and then like the finale is just like funny as hell. it just had me busting up, because basically Ayn is in the car with Hakim, and Hakim is piloting the car, and the car's steering wheel, if you can imagine it, listeners, it's like a car steering wheel, but it's got like loads of buttons on the side. And Ayn again is just a genius, because he times it perfectly. As Spike is giving chase, and kind of chasing down the car in the swordfish, Ayn starts pressing buttons on the steering wheel, and you realize when you look at it, he's not actually pressing random buttons. He's pressing
yeah.
like two specific ones, which are the ones that open up the kind of car doors, as Richard described them, like the DeLorean style doors, which causes chaos for Hakim. Spike is able to kind of then almost ram his car. This is while the scientists are giving chase and letting off shots left, right, and center, but like stormtroopers, their aim is shit. Um, and then I think they crashed in front of the police station, isn't it? Right at the end, is that
Yeah,
right?
it is. Yeah, literally, they literally go off a bridge, and where they land is basically right on the police doorstep.
Mm. Yeah, so he lands literally on in front of the ISSP, which is exactly where the scientists didn't want to end up. And then you kind of get this follow up scene, which is an episode of Big Shot with Punch and Judy again explaining kind of what's happened and how they've crashed this vehicle here, and the police have kind of stumbled across this wanted criminal in Hakeem Abdul and the scientists, and have charged them with what they were doing. Uh, and you find out as well via Big Shot that Ayn is not with them. Um, the next scene then is back on the Bebop, where you realize that Iron has ended up with Spike and Jet on there on the ship, and is going to be part of home. And I think the last thing they reference is fleas, is it, or ticks or something like that? He said, I think Spike says, no, Jet, sorry, says you've got to watch out for the ticks. And Spike is like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
And the last shot is just Iron nonchalantly kind of scratching himself behind the ear,
Mm.
which I love as well because it just kind of sums up Ein, the character and the way that he's done. Yeah, I mean, and that's pretty much the episode, I think, all in all. Was there anything that I missed from there apart from the other bits that you pointed out?
Oh no, not even. I mean, basically, we pretty much told the story and like the best bits. I mean, sorry, I've got a bit of a cough. Give me 2 seconds.
That's all right.
What like once again, we can keep coming back to the comedy of this episode. But one of my favorite scenes is the bit where I think it's Hakeem,
Mm,
where he's looking for what's it called? Where he's looking, or it's either Hakeem or Spike, where they're looking for Iron, and they kind of stop by this almost like a tarot reader vendor on the side of
mm,
the street,
mm.
and he starts trying to
Oh,
tell them like this the
yeah,
future, and he's like,
that's the Akeem, yeah.
yeah,
Mm,
yeah, it's Hakeem, yeah, and basically it almost sounds like to anybody who's standing, who's seen it from the outside, that this man is just talking nonsense, but
mm,
he essentially is talking the truth, which is something that I also noticed throughout the whole show. The
mm,
majority of people who are of a certain age, they almost have a certain form of like wisdom and mysticism behind it. Even
mm,
if sometimes they talk a bit crazy, they always seem to be like, well, you know what, they've kind of lived it.
mm,
Like, you may be in this new place and everything, but that's essentially what it is. It's just a new place, but to us, it's old. Like, you can have like, a terraformed part of Mars that looks like this, and it may be new to you, and you have all these adventures. No, life is just repeating itself, and
mm.
it's one of those things that I always feel that you get from the old guys. I forgot the guy's name, that the three guys that are named after the Spanish
Oh,
composer.
yeah, yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes, yeah.
yeah, it's like when it comes to one of the later episodes, you see that they are actually badasses. But and then obviously in the first episode you also meet like the shaman who speaks to Spike every so often throughout the season or throughout
Mm.
the show. And then obviously you've got this guy sitting beside the road, and he's saying something like, "Yeah, you're looking for something very very special." And then we know who he is, but you can see Hakeem's just saying like, "Listen, now you're just taking a piss out. Anybody can tell me this." And then there's a bit where he goes, "The thing that you'll be looking for will be coming past you very soon," and then you just see the dogs running behind him, and it's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like, fuck, it's so funny, man.
yeah,
And
yeah,
Hakeem's just vexed,
yeah,
and I think he just kind of, and then at some point he just looks up and he's like, wait a minute. Like,
yeah. Yeah, man. As I said, listeners, if there's one thing to take away from this session, as I said, is it's very very funny. So, if
yeah,
the first session may have been a bit dark and a bit heavy, if you prefer your animes a bit lighter with a light touch and a bit more humor, then definitely session two, Stray Dog Strut, is the one for you.
mm.
It really is brilliant.
um, and I tell you the other thing that I found funny is that the bit where Spike basically ends up chasing Hakeem after Hakeem's kidnapped him for the final time.
Mm.
And like Spike is just like, I'm not having this.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm getting this guy. And he's in his ship and he just looks bare disheveled.
yeah.
Like his
He
suit's
does.
got
Yeah, yeah,
his hair's all wild.
yeah.
And it's like, it's
Suit's
this thing
very
of just like,
rumpled. It's still a
Yeah,
bit more rumpled up, isn't it?
yeah, and it's got black marks in it, and it's at that point you just realize that you know what this guy's keeping because I think he mentions the thing about the Peking duck, and it's just like
Mm,
I don't care about this guy, I don't care about any stupid dog, yeah, this guy, he's keeping the food away from my mouth. I want this guy. Like,
mm. Yeah, man, it's brilliant. That's brilliant. As I said, listeners, like we can't recommend this episode highly enough, man. Go check it out. It's really, really good on so many levels. So yeah, make sure you go and watch that one. Okay, let's do a quick bit of trivia. So there's a couple of things that I've pulled up again from our trusty friend Bebopopedia. If
okay,
you want somewhere to go to kind of check out extra background details behind the episodes and things like that, then Bebopopedia is really, really good. So just type that into Google, and that will pop up for you, and you'll be able to get some details there. So some of the homages and references. We talked a little bit about Bruce Lee, and earlier on you mentioned Hakeem looked a bit like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
yeah,
Well, apparently, according to the website, that's exactly who he's based on. He's based on
mm,
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and specifically from Bruce Lee's movie Game of Death. Um,
yeah,
so you can kind of see the resemblance there when
mm.
you factor that in mind, and you look at the character and the way he kind of carries himself, and even the way
Well,
he
the thing
speaks
is,
as well.
the character that Abdul Jabbar plays in Game of Death is actually called Hakim.
Mm, mm,
So like I mean, so it's one of those things where it's like sometimes you get like a slight reference to a homage. I mean, I think the love that they have for Bruce Lee in this show in total is actually quite it is very apparent
mm.
and in quite a few things,
Yeah.
and I think it's one of the things where it's like they're just like you know what, we love it that much that we're not even gonna try and do like a little homage to it to make us look cool. We're basically going to show you. We're basically we're gonna spoon feed you how much we love this. So even if you don't know what it is, you're gonna have to go and search for it. And if you don't want, and if you do know what it is, you will basically know that this isn't any form of rip off. We actually just love it, and we know we can't top it, but we're gonna try our best to try and do our own version of it. And that's the thing that I like about Hakeem. Like there's no ifs or buts. You just like the minute you see Hakeem and you hear the name, you're just like, yep, I know who you're meant to be.
Mm.
That's pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Like even down to the bit where with the whole nunchuckers and it's the homages to Bruce Lee. I just they're actually quite touching.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
know,
Very much so.
considering that I mean, considering that you get quite a few other animes who always make allusion, make reference to be like, oh well, I like this film or I like this series, and they just kind of just touch it, briefly touch upon it. But this one, it shows homage, and it just shows you how far they're willing to go in reference to make their show a better show.
Mm.
That's the thing. That's what I love about this.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. I mean, it is. I mean, as we said, in the preamble episode, this show blends a lot of different genres and styles together, which is why it's kind of so enduring. There's something there for everybody, and everyone can take something from it. And one of those things that it manages to do is to pay homage to so many of the classics from popular culture and from movies that are things that we still enjoy and reference today. So yeah, it was very cool to see. Very, very cool. Apparently, the title of this episode is based on a song called "Stray Cat Strut" by a group called the
Yeah.
Stray Cats. And
Okay.
apparently, Stray Cat Strut is one of their popular songs from their album that was released in 1981. What else have we not covered here? Oh, yeah, this one was quite interesting. Spike actually uses a line in the show called "A Fistful of Woolongs." He says
Yeah.
"a fistful of woolongs" in the show, and
Yeah.
we found it. Well, I found that quite interesting, obviously, because it's a reference to "A Fistful of Dollars," the old
Yeah.
Western film, the classic. But apparently, according to Bebopopedia, this is only used in the English dubbed version. In the Japanese original, there's no reference to that line. So presumably that was something that was added with a view to appealing to American audiences and to Western
Okay.
audiences when it was released. So yeah, I thought that was quite a bit interesting
Hold
trivia.
on. So what was the original line?
I don't know. I wasn't able to find out. There's no kind of reference there. I mean, I could probably track down the original script, but
Yeah,
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he says something completely different.
yeah,
And I haven't seen the Japanese version of this one, or the original Japanese soundtrack for this episode, so I don't know what he actually says instead of that. But my guess, if I had to guess, I'd say it's probably something more culturally Japanese that he says in that period, and then as I said, they changed it for the international market when they did the
yeah.
US version. But yeah, I thought that was quite interesting. And also, apparently, the dog catcher's van with the scientists, its license plate reads NC hyphen 1702.
I know that. I know that. I know that. I know that. I know that code.
Yeah,
Isn't that the code for the Enterprise?
it is indeed. Yeah, bang on.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, it's actually the code for the Starship Enterprise, listeners. So those of you who are Star Trek fans, you probably would have recognized that code immediately. But yeah, that's the original Enterprise's code that was used there. And so the last kind of thing that we found here is that, oh yes, the Martian city. So as we kind of pointed out, it's heavily kind of Chinese and its influence. Um, the bartender that Abdul Hakim speaks to speaks with a kind of Chinese accent, I guess you would call
Yeah.
it. And in the original Japanese dub, apparently it's a Chinese actor who speaks in Chinese, and Hakim speaks Chinese back to him. So yeah, it just kind of feeds into the idea that it was, very heavily kind of influenced by Chinese culture, and that the
Mm.
Martian city is very much kind of like a Hong Kong style city, I guess. Yeah, so that's it, man. That's it. So, what's your takeaway from this session, from this episode,
That I can't wait to watch the the third episode,
man?
and and it's something which is done like quite. This is something quite cleverly done, because I mean you may not realize it now, but we've been well. I mean, obviously we do, but people who haven't seen the show, but we've essentially been introduced to a new character on a
Mm,
Bebop. So
mm,
we've been introduced to, like, we've been introduced to Spike, we've been introduced to, to Jet, and as far as we're concerned, they're the mainstays. And when we go into this show, we generally just think it's just going to be about these guys
mm,
just doing their thing. Like, essentially, like, it's you just think to yourself, oh well, it's just going to be every single week, just, you know, Jet moaning and being a bit of like a father figure, and Spike being a bit of a, hothead and a young cat, and them really not getting on, but getting on in their own special way, and that's it. And then now you've just got somebody who's been thrown into the mix, and it's not your usual type of character, which would be like, like a woman, another woman, or a woman or another man, or a small child. It's a dog, not even like a special dog, like
mm,
an Alsatian. It's a
mm,
Welsh corgi,
mm,
just a Welsh corgi. One of those, like, one of those dogs that, like you said, the only person who you've ever seen of this dog ever is like the Queen.
mm.
That's it. You don't walk past, you don't go to Baxy's dog home and like, oh yeah, can I have a Welsh corgi, please? No, they'll be like, that shit costs money. So like,
Mm,
so basically now we're watching a show about bounty hunters who in this era are now called cowboys, and they travel across the universe, hopping from planet to planet, which has been terraformed, and certain planets now look like other places that used to be on Earth that was destroyed, and they've now had a member join their crew that is a Welsh corgi.
mm.
I want to know what they were smoking or taking when they started writing the show.
Yeah, man, because they were obviously on some good shit. So yeah, we definitely want to hook up on that one. But yeah, I mean, my takeaway is much the same as yours, man. As I said, Ayn is one of my favorite characters. I mean, I love them all. I love all the Bebop
Mm,
characters, and listeners, I'm sure you will grow to love them as well as you carry on, this experience with us. But I've always loved, just because he's cute, he's smart, he's resourceful, and he's just the best, man. He's one of the best
yeah, yeah,
kind of TV animals I've come across. Like one of my other sort of favorite dogs would be the Littlest Hobo from you remember him from
yeah.
the Littlest Hobo TV show, and the dog from that. I can't remember that dog's name though. Like,
Yeah, no, no, that's because he didn't have a name though. Remember he was given a different name every single episode
yeah, that's right.
by
That's
like
right.
by like some orphan kid or something, or some kid that was blind.
Yeah. But yeah, man, Ein's got his own name. He's got his own like character traits. He's carved out his niche in the show, man,
Mm,
for real. Yeah, he's definitely a star and one to look out for in future episodes too. So yeah, man, I'm looking forward to exploring more about Ein and all the other characters.
yeah. In fact, I've got one more thing to mention before we go.
Mm.
Um, the use of color in
Yes,
this, and
yes.
when I mean color, I'm talking like Hakeem being a black,
Mm.
and then obviously like Punch from Big Shot being
Yes,
black as
yeah, yeah,
well.
yeah. Mm.
Yeah, which is and I mean it's weird because it shouldn't be a thing, but then obviously when you notice it, it is a thing.
Mm.
And but even one of the gangsters that yeah, I think one no, not one of the gangsters. I think somebody in a bar who's drinking who does when Hakeem goes into the bar. I think there's somebody of some form of color, but there's all different types of races that you're seeing throughout this show. So
Mm.
we've met like Native American, we've met we've met old Chinese, we've met the lady who actually owns the pet shop. She looks like she could be a number of things, but just not your normal run of the mill, you know, American Asian kind of character.
Mm.
So I did find that really really interesting and quite easy in the eye. And but once again, it makes the universe of Bebop feel that little bit more real, where you're
Mm.
just seeing people of all different types. It's really really good. It's ahead of its time. Like one of the things we're going to keep on repeating is that this is a show that was made quite some time ago.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. Very,
yeah,
very.
yeah. So
The
seeing. Sorry, say again.
the original airing date. Sorry, because I forgot to mention that the original airing date for this episode in Japan was the 31st of October, 1998. So
Damn.
yeah, a long time ago. 20 years, in fact.
Mm,
So yeah, you're right. It just goes to sum up your point, basically.
yeah.
The show's ahead of
Good.
its
Yeah, because I mean, at this point, I mean, I mean, unless people can, any of you listeners can actually like tell me any shows or movies that might have come out that might have portrayed, people of various races, then by all means, by send it through. Because I'm not saying that it didn't exist, but it's few and far between that I can remember seeing anything like that apart from this.
time.
I mean, we're still talking about when Bebop was kicking off. I think basically Dragon Ball in the West was kicking off, and it had characters that essentially had black traits, but they might have blue skin or green skin. So like Piccolo, who's a a fan favorite in Dragon Ball. For a fact if they ever change it to like humans, Piccolo's like Ving Rhames
Oh
or
yeah, for
Michael
sure.
Clark Duncan or something like that.
Mhm.
And and yeah, and I think what else? There was something else. Or like Appleseed, which is a famous, like a really famous manga and anime which has been running for quite a few years. And one of the main characters called Bararios, but before he gets changed into a cyborg, he's of African American descent, like true African American descent. And
Mm.
the writer basically said that he wanted to display all races throughout a medium which he loved reading about, but because he had traveled a bit, he wanted to like try and put some of his travels into the story. But
Mm.
when they translated Appleseed onto actual anime, whether it be the TV show or like TV movie or the CG animated series, Boyarius started off as white, and then they kind of gave him a bit like a Latino look
Mm.
to keep him still with like have certain features, which is weird. But I mean, so like, and that wasn't even too long ago.
Mm.
When they kind of gave Borealis like the Latino look. But like I said, you're watching Bebop '98, and you're getting like all types of races.
Mm.
The show is ahead of its time. I keep saying now it's ahead of its time because it's still doing stuff now that hasn't been done, you know, like now which is like the newer stuff that's coming out. So
Mm.
kudos to it, man.
Mm. Absolutely, absolutely. Alfredo, I just quickly looked it up while you're talking there. Apparently, he is Latino. But
Who is?
sorry, that's Punch's real name. His real name is Alfredo.
Oh,
But
is Alfredo? Oh yeah, she say yeah. I swear she says it. Oh, it's
yeah,
Latino. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's his background there. But yeah, I mean, again, it just goes to show what you were saying, really, which is that there's a
Mm,
diversity of the people involved in this show, and we'll definitely
Yeah.
see that further down the road as well in other episodes, because he does, one of the things that Watanabe does with these is he makes it feel very real and very grounded.
Mm.
All kinds of people who inhabit this universe, and we will meet them, listeners, going down the road.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have to wrap this one up. Thanks a lot for having a listen with us. Do make sure that you like our Facebook page. We do have a Facebook page set up, and if you want to leave us any comments about the show or where you're at with the episodes or what you think of the episodes, then please do. Wherever you find this podcast, you should find a link that will send you straight through to our Facebook page as well, so you can check that out. All right, Rich. Let's call this one a night, man, and move on from this one because yeah, my throat is dry. It's a common theme, listeners. It's a common theme. If you listen to our other podcasts, you know my throat is always running dry. But yeah, there you go. So yeah, we'll call this one done, and we'll head on to session three. We hope you'll join us on session three as well. Look out for that
Yeah.
on social media, and we'll let you know when that one will be going up. Um, yeah, Rich, let's say goodnight, man. So you could say goodnight.
Uh, See you, Space Cowboy.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And good night from me. And yeah, we'll see you, Space Cowboy. Take care of all of yourselves, and we'll see you again real soon. Peace.